All quickscopers and challenge runners, sit down. Hawkeye Gough hits a dragon against the wind from a mile away, and he is blind. After gaming's greatest shot of all time, he celebrates by sitting back down and continuing his wood carving. Welcome to Hawkshaw's take on Hawkeye Gough. Black Iron Tarkus is a heavy boy. Havel is a heavier boy. Smough is even chunkier. But Gough is the heaviest of all heavy boys. Gough can't see. He isn't faking it. His hand delicately feels for his bow, and if we go quiet while fighting, or wear the slumbering dragon crest ring, he strains to hear us, and belly flops the air. This leaves us with two mysteries. What is the cause of his blindness? Is it because of his eyes, or because of his helmet? And second, how on earth does he make this shot? The second mystery can be answered. Gough listens. Watch him. He cocks his head to one side, waiting for the sound of the dragon's wings. Once he has heard the dragon taking off, he draws back his bow. He needs to do this in advance so the noise doesn't interfere with listening to the dragon. And it is noisy. Gough draws back this mighty bow with all his strength. And if Gough the Giant grunts like that, then the arrow is going to hit hard. With his bow drawn, he stays stock still, silent. He's listening again. He knows the dragon's routine. He hears the dragon every day of his imprisonment. He listens and waits until just the right moment. So Gough helps us to defeat Kalameet, but he helps the Dark Souls community with much more, with lore and wisdom. Gough was dismissed as brutish, but we don't think of him this way. But the first mystery remains. Is it his eyes or his helmet that make him blind? And if it's his helmet, why doesn't he take it off? Gough's first impression surprised us. He looks very different from the other giants we meet. He has very unique fashion soles. He has a gold medallion chained around his torso that puts all sunlight medals to shame. I mean, that thing is a goddamn dinner plate for a drake. That much gold is probably worth more than a mansion in prime Anor Londo real estate. The next unique fashion soles is a pauldron on his shoulder. This pauldron is made of a dragon bone. Big boy Gough doesn't just have a dragon tooth, he wears a whole goddamn bone. Next is his helmet. This is remarkably unique, and that's even before noticing the streaks of resin. And finally, he wears the hawk ring. Our next impression of Hawkeye Gough is when we talk to him, his voice. It is very unique, and we personally found it quite soothing, though we've heard it has been thought of as boring, kind, and even scary.
A visitor, have we?
This is the sound of the original voice recording of the original voice actor, which we think is just as beautiful.
That old friend he was. Thanks to thee, he left this world with honor intact.
You can probably hear that this is the same voice actor who played Beor of the Twin Fangs in Demon Souls, and also Blacksmith Ed and Blacksmith Baldwin in the same game. By the time we met Gough, we knew about Faris, who, despite being a human, ranked alongside Gough. It seems that archers all have an interest in fashion souls, with Faris wielding the unique black bow and wearing his famous hat, universally popular among children. Faris brings us the idea of rank. In the ancient past, before the chaos of Lordran today, rank was very important, and one of our obsessions is who was the leader of the Four Knights of Gwyn. Gough himself is a serious contender for this position. Why? He's explicitly called the leader of the Dragon Slayers in his bow's description. Not only that, his armour is built of a similar material as the Silver Knight armour. Now, back in time there were only Silver Knights. Black Knights did not exist at the time of the War of the Dragons. The metal being similar to the Silver Knights implies some sort of connection. Furthermore, Gough's placement in the DLC is remarkably close to an old Silver Knight training ground. It feels as though Gough may have been involved in the training of soldiers as well as a leader. All this does lead us to think that Gough had a strong chance of being the leader of the Four Knights, as it would follow that the top knight commanded the force of Silver Knights. Artorias and Ciaran could technically be the leaders, but we feel that Ciaran is a very unlikely leader, as she is the Lord's blade, an assassin. Assassins can rarely be leaders due to the fact that leaders must be known by their troops, and assassins must work in the shadows. And speaking of shadows, such as the Abyss, Artorias seems to consistently go on quests that were solitary and ill-advised, which is hardly the behaviour of a leader, which leads to the last option, Ornstein. To stay defending the capital is certainly the job of a leader, though some may argue that he was only an illusion. His armour states Ornstein is believed to be the captain of the Four Knights. So once again we have a description implying leadership, and this time it is explicitly of the Four Knights, not only of the Dragon Slayers. However, the phrasing "believed to be" makes us question, could this be a mistaken belief of modern times? Ornstein also drops the soul that was given to all four of the knights by Gwyn, again hinting at a higher status. But we like the idea that Gough was the wise leader of the emotional Four Knights, and so for Gough's video, that's what we will choose to believe. In terms of literal strength, we can actually compare them, and set Gough to fight Ornstein or Artorias, though note, Gough is doing a no weapon challenge in each of these duels. Of course, leadership will not have been chosen by who was the strongest. What we can say for certain is that Gough fought alongside his fellow knights in the ancient dragon war, and the absolute leader was Gwyn, and all of them were among his faithful knights.
Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, and his faithful knights.
Gough would have been a nightmare for the dragons. With his huge HP and massive damage output we see in action against Calamite, we can experience it ourselves if we are unwise enough to fight him. Though what sick madman would think of attacking Gough, we just don't know. Gwyn treated his knight Gough with great respect. He gave Gough his position. The enormous gold medallion was also given by Gwyn. Gough's armour says, "The medallion, bequeathed by the Lord himself, and the dragonbone pauldrons are symbols of the highest honours." All of Gough's items repeatedly mention honour, as if they're making a point. Gough seems to have done nothing but gain glory for Anor Londo, but plenty of evidence suggests that many did not follow Gwyn's example. Many disrespected him. While his helm was given as a decoration of knightly honour, we can see that the eye holes are stuffed with resin. It was done by those who dismissed Gough as a brutish giant. We don't know when the eye holes were blocked, but whether during the time of the DLC or the early Age of Fire, it was a land of prejudice against giants. The DLC is dripping in prejudice. We face rudeness about being human with almost every character. We smell human, but not intolerably so.
Thy scent is very human indeed, but not intolerable.
We are told that it's typical human nature to be violent and aggressive.
You humans, always taking what you please.
Faris ranks alongside Gough despite being human, and this likely refers to more than just strength. It seems that humans are the lowest in the hierarchy, with giants being slightly above them, and then the race or beings that we call lords above them. And the prejudice towards giants weighs on Gough. In the past he was dismissed as brutish, and in the present he is locked up. Despite his good behaviour, he is still treated badly. He is not allowed to escape his status of giant. The Dark Souls guidebook says giant slaves, which adds up with what we see in game. Yet the Tomb of the Giants is also deeper down in the earth, and closer to Nito's domain. Nito, the first of the dead, is also giant-like. This makes us question whether giants came before, or at least died before, the lords. From Software frequently makes titans or giants or larger creatures inhabit the world before they gradually shrink until the modern day. This primordial nature of the giants may lead to prejudice. Primordial things are often more brutish, and we have to admit that some other giants aren't exactly Socrates.
Forge apples, make shiny, more.
However, perhaps the giants are simply not afforded the opportunity to learn in the culture of Lordran, And the giant blacksmith, while simple in words, is perhaps the most advanced blacksmith in-game, and uses his hammer like no one else. We see prejudice beyond Gough. Giants are forced to do menial labour, pulling chains and rolling boulders. Blacksmithing is the highest role we can find. Many are chained in place. And Gough, the greatest of them all, is locked up. Gough does not deserve his treatment. Despite being a giant, Gough treats us with more humanity than perhaps any other being in Dark Souls. He shows enormous empathy for his fellow knights.
If thine was the blade to which Artorias fell, then thou must be wary of Ciaran. She had strong feelings for the great Artorias, the poor girl.
For Manos,
They awoke that thing themselves and drove it mad.
and for ourselves.
Tomorrow, is the black dragon posing me duress?
Alas, a lot of the nuances of Lordran's ancient culture will never be found out, but we bet that Gough didn't deserve his mistreatment. If an evil-minded Dark Souls player did attack and kill Gough, he will drop his remarkable bow. This is the mightiest great bow in Dark Souls. It does more damage than even the Dragonslayer great bow of Gough's Silver Knight archers. It also has that sweet B scaling. However, from far distances, it does less damage than the Dragonslayer bow. This gives us extra lore. Gough got right up in the dragon's business when firing his arrows. Interestingly, Gough's handmade arrows are less powerful than his Dragonslayer archer's arrows. We wonder why this is. Gough makes his arrows by hand with tree bark and stone. This sounds suspiciously like dragon scales and arch trees, the foundational parts of the old dragon world. Has anyone experimented with his arrows specifically against dragon-type enemies? From Software games sometimes have a theme of like being effective against like. Stone can be effective against stone. Perhaps these arrows are super effective against what Gough shot at, the stone dragons. Do note that he will also give you his bow if you just go through his questline peacefully. And it's not the only useful thing for PvP he gives us. He gives us his infamous carvings, heads made from arch trees. In Dark Souls, player communication is limited. Online players can write messages with soapstones, but we are limited to specific words. While these combinations can be funny, we are still silent. But Gough's carved heads allow us to show emotion. Thanks to him, we can greet each other audibly in co-op.
Hello!
Then, after a successful co-op, should we invade our old friend's world accidentally, we can tell them,
I'm sorry.
But these heads aren't as useful in PvE as they are rumoured to be. There is a rumour that if you're on a ledge and you throw a head, if you can hear hello clearly, it is safe.
Hello!
If you hear nothing, then the fall will be deadly. It is not true. You can hear Gough's carvings even if the fall is deadly, so best stick to prism stones. This wood carving has been a pastime of Gough at least since he was locked up. But who locked him up? We know one thing, it was not Gwyn. Not only did Gwyn gift so many symbols of honour to Gough that it's very unlikely that their relationship would sour, but we can logically deduce that Gwyn had already left for the First Flame by the time of the DLC and Gough's imprisonment. We can tell by the presence of pyromancy in the DLC. Pyromancy spread to the real world only after Gwyn's war against demons, and Gwyn left immediately after this war to the kiln of the First Flame. So the next question is, could Gough have been part of the plot against the gods, and locked up as a consequence? Once again, this is not the case. The Undead Burg, a place where planning the plot against the gods took place, did not exist in the time of the DLC. So we still don't know why or when exactly Gough was locked up. The one time Gough seems to get truly angry is when he references Manos.
Seduced by a dark serpent or no, they awoke that thing themselves and drove it mad.
Could it be that he was in Ulasil training Silver Knights, but took a stance against the Ulasil townfolk? Or can the lore of his wood carvings help us with an answer? One carving says, in Gough's voice,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. The description says, "This head says I'm sorry. Have another look. Isn't that an expression of atonement? Why would Gough be making this carving? Does he blame himself for something? Did he do something wrong? We think it's unlikely. Or maybe he's apologizing for something else. The poor inmate sells dung pies. Is that because he has nowhere to go? And on that note, how does he eat? And where does he get the wood he carves?" Let's just assume that Gough is enlightened, and all things come naturally to him. Once again, Dark Souls gives us an eternal mystery that will never quite be solved. What we do know is that Gough has turned to a quest of personal enlightenment. He is mastering wood carvings, and through it, mastering himself. We don't know if he can escape. It seems he has chosen not to. He is, quote, retired.
What good is a dog with no hands to hunt?
He knows he is blind and imprisoned, but he seems to accept everything. This leads us to the most important part of Gough's lore. Gough's lore isn't really about when he was locked up or the wars he fought. It's about what he teaches us. Gough is a stoic, and this answers the helmet mystery. His eyes may work perfectly, but he chooses to wear the helmet stuffed with resin. This is because he lives by a philosophy of acceptance, perhaps to show others that he could be delicate and accurate, even once they blinded him, to show that they were the ones blinded by prejudice. When he is locked in prison, he faces it stoically. He does not try to escape. Instead, he finds freedom through carving. Like the sage in the mountains, Gough trades a cave for a prison, and he is finding enlightenment. Almost all NPCs have more freedom, and yet they are more unhappy than Gough. The most unhappy NPC is the one with the most choices. Even when we unlock the door, which would give any prisoner some hope of change, Gough simply continues carving, undisturbed. Gough accepts and flows with what life brings. He is not brutish, he is wise. When we tell him our plans, he responds with kindness and wisdom. If we tell him we don't want to fight the dragon, he says he agrees, calmly saying,
"A wise choice."
If we choose to fight, he says,
"Good, good. What is bravery without a dash of recklessness?"
And yet if we change our minds, he calmly agrees the other way.
"Yes, surely that is best."
Each time his response is open in case we change our minds. He does not push us or correct us, and when he sells us his wares, we see more evidence of his stoicism. He has homeward bones. It seems that he likes the calm that this imprisonment has allowed him. He would rather stay here in peace until the dust from his carving falls off him like snow. But there is one more question about Gough. If this is the past, is Gough still alive in the present? Ciaran is dead. Artorias is dead. Ornstein is gone or killed by us. So what of Gough? Ulasil is Darkroot Garden back in time, and the area where Gough was imprisoned seems to have been swallowed by the abyss. However, there are those that love him to this day. The giant blacksmith. Behind the blacksmith, behind all his other tools, hidden in a chest, is Gough's ring. If the Hawk ring was swallowed by the abyss, how could Gough's friend still have it? Could it be that he escaped his prison cell and gifted it to the giant blacksmith in person before leaving for a life of solitude and meditation? The truth is we will never know. We like to think Gough is sitting in the sunlight outside a mountain cave, carving away, and if a lone adventurer stumbles upon him, you can be sure that Gough will not tell him what to do, and will not ask anything from him. But if he is asked, he will help them with guidance, and with wise advice. It is what he did for us. Gough is an example of why this game lives on in all of us, even all this time later.
Thou will understand one day. At thy twilight, old thoughts return in great waves of nostalgia.